I have written an article which was published barely a few days ago, I think on the 24th of January, explaining this position in the Open magazine, capturing my arguments in detail with respect to the Places of Worship Act, giving 3 different layers of arguments as to why none of those provisions come in the way of reclamation of sites such as Kashi and Mathura. And allow me to say this, my position, and I agree with Vishnu on this, and I think he agrees with me on this, is that we are not just looking at Kashi and Mathura, we are looking at 40,000 sites across the board. Because no one can make a concession on behalf of anybody else. It's like saying, Rahul Shivshankar has a dispute with his neighbor on ownership of property. Sai Deepak steps into the picture on behalf of Rahul Shivshankar and says, you know what, let's maintain peace and harmony. I will concede this land on behalf of Rahul Shivshankar. Who am I to do that? Right? It's a property dispute. It's an ownership of religious property. Therefore, no third party, even if he happens to be or they happen to be the representatives of Hindu or Hindutva according to them, can make any concession on behalf of those interested in reclamation of these sites, because it is for the devout, it's for the owners of the property to reclaim. Nobody can make the concession on anybody's behalf. So let the clarification come on record. Now let's answer your question. Bear with me for the answer that I'm about to give on the Ayodhya judgment. I will walk you through the problems of that judgment and explain why it makes no sense whatsoever to cite that judgment as coming in the way of this legal action. First, the first principle of law is, if an issue has never arisen for consideration in a judgment, then any, let's say, observations on that issue don't constitute legally binding findings. Okay? Which means the Places of Worship Act was irrelevant to the Ayodhya dispute. Why? Because Section 5 of the Places of Worship Act says nothing in this act applies to the Ram Janmabhoomi proceeding. Okay? If no provision of the act and the act itself does not apply to the Ram Janmabhoomi proceeding, then no provision of the act was ever up for challenge or question or scrutiny or adjudication before the Ayodhya bench. Okay? Therefore, all the 10 paragraphs on which, according to me, respectfully, ink was wasted in discussing Places of Worship Act and its so-called contribution to this grand Indian philosophy called secularism, or imported philosophy called secularism, according to me, have no role to play. It has no force of law. It is not legally binding. It has no precedential value. This is an irrefutable position of law.
No. Okay.
On this, I have written at least 4 articles in the immediate aftermath of the Ayodhya judgment. This is not an afterthought of an argument. I've been writing this for 4 years because I realized that while the judgment was being written, the effective argument being made in the judgment was, we will give you one temple while we will shut the door for recovery for other temples. Okay? Unfortunately, the law remains the same regardless of who authors it and who says it. Therefore, nothing in the judgment comes in the way of recovery of Kashi, Mathura, or 39,998 temples. Point number 1. Point number 2. The discussion on the Places of Worship Act in the Ayodhya judgment is a factual error. You know why? That discussion is triggered by the Constitution Bench's mistaken understanding that the Allahabad High Court dealt with the Places of Worship Act in its judgment of 2010. I went through each of the judgments of the 3 judges of the Allahabad High Court, Justice Sharma, Justice Agarwal, and I think Justice Khan. I went through all the 3 judgments. None of them discusses Places of Worship Act.
Right.
The Constitution Bench effectively lays the foundation for its discussion on the Places of Worship Act, saying, since the Allahabad High Court has discussed it, we have to discuss it.
Right.
The Allahabad High Court did not do it. The Allahabad High Court cited a 1995 judgment called the Marthoba judgment, in which the Places of Worship Act was extracted. Okay. So it was actually an error of reading. I wrote an article to this effect in the New Indian Express, and I was asked to stop writing on the subject later.